What is up, guys? Delboy here. I just wanted to talk about Oleksandr Usyk versus Marco Huck. This fight is going to take place as part of the World Boxing Super Series, and this fight obviously takes place at Cruiserweight. And Usyk picked Marco Huck. And let's talk about the fight. Let's just do a little preview. I am trying to work through all of these World Boxing Super Series fights. Just sort of briefly preview them, not predictions, just sharing my initial thoughts. And Usyk versus Huck, I think it's a relatively decent fight. I do think Marco Huck is probably one of the weaker guys in this tournament. I do feel Marco Huck is towards the end of his career now. If I look at Marco Huck and I match him up with the rest of the guys in this tournament, I wouldn't really pick him to beat anybody. Maybe he beats Kudryashov because Kudryashov is so open and so defensively flawed. Maybe he beats Kudryashov, and maybe he beats Wlodarczyk at this stage as well because he's also getting up there in age. But apart from those two, I wouldn't pick him against any other guys. And even those two I mentioned have a great shot of beating Marco Huck. So I do think Huck is one of the weaker guys in this tournament, mainly because he's aged. I don't think he's a fighter he was a few years ago. But regardless of that, it's still a good fight because ultimately this is only Usyk's 13th fight and he's fighting Marco Huck. Fighting somebody like Marco Huck in your 13th fight is still impressive. Marco Huck is still a contender. He'll still beat some up-and-coming guys. He'll still beat certain guys as well. He's still a dangerous guy, you know. He's gone the 12-round distance numerous times. He's fought in big fights. He's got the joint most Cruiserweight title defences. So he's still a factor. It's still a great name to have on your resume. But I do feel Marco Huck is coming towards the end now, unfortunately. But stylistically, I still think it's a good fight. Obviously, if you look at Oleksandr Usyk, he is definitely the more skilled operator. You know, he comes out of that southpaw stance. He can fight on the inside really well for a big guy. But I still think he's best on the outside when he's using that jab and when he's working behind it. I think he's when he's in that methodical mindset and working off his jab, I think he looks very good. When he starts to trade and fight, he does get hit a bit and he does lose his concentration. I have noticed that in a few fights. We saw that against Michael Hunter when, you know, there was a few rounds where he kind of got a bit careless. And as a result, Michael Hunter was picking up rounds, and he wasn't quite being the thinking fighter that he usually is in that fight. I do think Usyk does have some concentration lapses here and there, but he's still an inexperienced pro, although he was a very experienced amateur. You know, he's still only 12 fights in, so those things are going to happen. And maybe against Marco Huck, if you have those moments, he could punish you, because as I said, he is very experienced and he has got quite a good punch as well. And yeah, I do think Huck, although Usyk is a much better technician, Marco Huck is a bit of a caveman at times. He comes wading in, he might catch you with his head, he might catch you with his elbows, or his forearms. He can be really dirty. And if he does that against Usyk, how's Usyk going to react to that? How is Usyk going to react to those roughhouse tactics? We've seen fighters against Huck when they don't react well against those type of tactics. But at the same time, if you can sort of keep up with it and you can sort of work through it, Marco Huck is there to be outboxed. We saw that against Marius Bradis. You know, Bradis had none of that dirty stuff from Marco Huck, and he comprehensively outboxed him. So it's going to be interesting to see how Usyk does compared to Marius Bradis, who is also in the tournament. I think just due to Marco Huck's aggressive style and his awkwardness, he can pose some problems. He's got one of those styles, almost like Marcus Maidana, where his shots are not that conventional sometimes. Sometimes he'll throw shots at weird angles. He'll bring his shots up almost from a floor and kind of loop them. Maybe those type of shots will trouble Usyk. Maybe the unorthodox style will give Usyk some problems, but Usyk he's a classier boxer. He's got the better hand speed, the better punch variation, the better technique, and he's a fresher guy. And all round, he's a better fighter. So, you know, I've got to make Usyk a big favourite. But if Marco Huck is going to fight Usyk, maybe this is the best time when Usyk is still a little bit inexperienced. He's not inexperienced compared to most 12-0 guys, but he's still not had to deal with a lot of those bad situations in the ring. He did against Michael Hunter, but I never felt Michael Hunter really hurt Usyk. Maybe if Marco Huck could hurt Usyk, maybe that'll be something interesting to see. But I do make Usyk a big favourite here. Still a decent fight, but I still think it's a good fight for Usyk, and one I'm looking forward to. Another good cruiserweight fight. I think stylistically it could be either one of those really messy fights. I think it could be a bit of a war. It's one of those fights that could turn out any way, but regardless of how it turns out, what type of fight it is, I just expect Usyk to come through. The better technique, the fresher guy, and he's coming into this fight with quite a bit of momentum, and sometimes that's key. Usyk is coming into this fight undefeated, and Marco Huck is coming into this fight after quite a one-sided loss to Maurice Bradis. So yeah, I expect Usyk to win, but I'll make my official prediction video a bit later on. What do you guys think of this fight? Peace.